Embrace the mess. That's where the good stuff lives. That's the quote that kind of sums up the themes of this episode of Only Murders in the Building. This episode, titled The Sting, I feel that it was kind of a step down from the first 3 episodes in a number of ways. It wasn't bad by any means, but I think for a number of reasons, a lot of people are going to think it's a little bit ho-hum. I think that quote, stated by Cindy Canning, Tina Fey's podcast queen, who noteworthily makes I think it was a $30 million deal during the episode, selling herself and her ability to make podcasts. This episode it's bookended with this conceit that we hear Tina Fey's Cindy Canning doing a podcast and narration about second chances. And the cleverness of this is that at the beginning of the episode, we think, well, this is just, applying to the characters' situations as we see, Steve Martin's Charles Hayden Savage looking for a second chance with Jan, played by Amy Ryan, who he kind of messed up their first date by refusing to open up about his personal issues. He didn't embrace the mess. And over the course of the episode, of course, he manages to open up to her and get that second chance. But this narration from Cindy Canning turns out to be her podcast, and in a pretty good twist, it's her podcast on this show's trio and their investigation into the murder. And the title of her podcast is Only Murderers in the Building. So clearly, there's a little bit of a meta joke going on there, but it's a nice little way to foreshadow that this investigation could go very, very wildly off the rails. And I think that this episode ended strong, so a lot of people are going to, be excited to come back next week. But I do feel that I'm not normally a proponent of the binge because I like having the weekly discussion of shows. I think if you watch it all at once, the season just kind of becomes one big mishmash and you forget what happened in what episode and it doesn't live as long in your memory. But this show just screams to be binged because I just don't think there's enough meat on a weekly basis for the internet to really, really dig in to it. And I just feel that I think it might hurt it, at least initially, that it was released one episode at a time. We'll see. I mean, I think that the later episodes are probably going to get better, but to me, this just feels like a light, fun show that, because it's a murder mystery, we just want to get through to the end. We don't really want to wait. I mean, my wife, after we finished the first 3 episodes, said, wait a minute, there's only going to be 1 episode a week from now on? Okay, I'm waiting until they're all out to finish the show. And I imagine a lot of people are going to do that because it's just a little bit frustrating when you get to the end of the episode. They set up these cliffhangers, and, some of them, they're pretty obvious cliffhangers, but they're well executed. And a lot of shows these days just don't even think to put a hook in there to get people back for the next week. So well done on that. I feel like leaving the audience with something interesting will make people feel more positively about this episode on the whole. But to me, this episode, it definitely felt very, very predictable, and I think that was large part due to the structure the show has taken, which is it seems that they're going to, kind of have a suspect that they focus on every week, and then they're going to eliminate that suspect, and then they'll move on to another suspect. And the only times that the show broke away from this template were the times that I felt like it was on stronger footing. I think this episode was actually less funny, less humorous than the previous 3 episodes. I think some of that comes down to this episode was more focused on Charles Hayden Savage than it was on Oliver Putman, played by Martin Short. I think that Oliver is just a more funny character, gets more laughs, and the focus on Charles, I think that kind of made it less laugh out loud to a large extent. I think that the suspect this week, Sting, it was pretty obvious that he was not going to turn out to be the murderer. If he had actually turned out to be the murderer, I would have really, really given them credit for going there. But this show, to me, the most clever things about this Sting cameo were the cultural references. They used it to show the disconnect between Mabel Mora and Charles and Oliver when it comes to pop culture, but also just the puns that they did with Sting's name. Obviously, the title of the episode is The Sting. If this were a Friends episode, it would be titled The One with Sting. So that was cleverly done. But the cameo on the whole, I feel like was slightly wasted. I think the best two celebrity cameos I've ever seen were Matt Damon in House of Lies and Keanu Reeves in Always Be My Maybe. Those two were brilliant and subversive and hilarious. And to me, I feel like the show, it would have been better if they had had the wit or the nerve to do more with this Sting cameo, because to me it just felt rather, it just didn't, it felt stale. We're no longer that thrilled to see cameos from celebrities like Sting. And I'm sure all the Sting fans are getting ready to, write in the comments section, this cameo was thrilling, what's your problem? But to me, I feel like, it would have been more interesting if they had completely subverted his image, and they didn't want to do that. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Sting would never live in this setting, and that he, this is not actually what Sting is like or what his life is like. But nonetheless, I feel that they could have done a lot more with it than they did, and I wish that they had chosen to go there in a big way. But otherwise, this episode, like the theme I said was embrace the mess. And you see that in the investigation as the characters kind of, as they're trying to interview Sting to find out whether perhaps he might be the murderer, things quickly get messy, but the characters just kind of embrace it and go with it, and they ultimately are able to seemingly rule out Sting as a suspect. And you see this also obviously in Charles's courtship of Jan. Amy Ryan, she's an Office alum. She's really, really talented at, managing to make it seem that she's falling for unconventional romantic interest. She did this with Michael, played by Steve Carell in The Office, and she's doing it to a lesser extent here with Charles, who clearly has a lot of emotional baggage and hang-ups. But there is a sweetness to this relationship that I'm sure will charm a lot of people. I do feel, it's largely forgettable, but like I said, I do feel like it's very sweet, and a lot of people will definitely enjoy it. I don't know how long it's going to be before Jan becomes a suspect. I'm sure that's coming at some point in the story, and whether she'll ultimately be ruled out and how quickly that will happen, we'll have to wait and see. But I have to imagine, given the format of the show so far, it's just a matter of time until Charles and Oliver suspect Jan. I feel, like I said, that this episode ended on a strong note with the revelation that the tie-dye guy, who, Charles has insisted they shouldn't rule out as a suspect, is following Mabel. And I assume this is going to be Aaron Dominguez, who's been in the credits for the first 4 episodes, but hasn't actually appeared on screen yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But, that's a good cliffhanger. Obvious, maybe, but, it works. The mysterious person following you that we've already established as a potential person of interest, it works. And also that Oliver and Charles find out from Oliver's son, Will, that Mabel knew the deceased and that she was present at the apartment years previous when another murder took place. So obviously this is going to create a rift in the dynamic trio as they wonder why she hid this from them. And obviously it doesn't really seem like Mabel had anything to do with either of these deaths, but nonetheless it's going to be hard for Charles and Oliver to explain away why she was keeping this secret from them. So on the whole, I enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to next week, but I kind of wish they had just released all the episodes, or at least 3 episodes. I feel like having just one episode of a show that's only a half-hour show is just not enough. But let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of Only Murders in the Building and other shows, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching. So I realize now that it probably seems like I was trying to be clever having this in the background this week, but this has been in the background every week for a while, and it's just a complete coincidence.